There is a moment just before everything changes when the world is still ordinary. A column of soldiers moves along a road. Boots on gravel. The weight of a pack pulling at the shoulders. Someone is thinking about water. Someone else is thinking about home. The mind is loose, wandering, half asleep on its feet. And then the first shot arrives. What happens next does not happen the way the soldier will later remember it. In the first 10 seconds of an ambush, the human mind does something so fast, so strange, and so far beneath the level of conscious thought that the person it happens to often cannot describe it at all. They will say it felt like time stopped. They will say they don't remember deciding anything. They will say their body acted before they did. All of that is true. And underneath it is a sequence of events inside the brain that is one of the most remarkable things biology has ever built. This is what really happens, not in those 10 seconds. The first thing to understand is that the soldier does not consciously hear the shot. Not at first. Sound travels to the brain along 2 different roads. The slow road goes up to the part of the brain that thinks, that recognizes, that names things, the road that lets you say to yourself, that was gunfire. The fast road skips all of that. It runs straight from the ear to a small, almond-shaped structure buried deep in the brain called the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, its oldest and most paranoid sentry. The fast road is roughly twice as quick as the slow one, which means that for a fraction of a second, the soldier's body knows it is in danger before the soldier knows anything at all. The amygdala does not wait for confirmation. It cannot afford to. In evolutionary terms, the animal that waited to be certain a sound was a predator was the animal that got eaten. So the amygdala works on a brutal logic: react first, understand later. A loud crack, an unexpected motion at the edge of vision, and it fires before the thinking brain has even been informed there is a decision to make. And when it fires, it pulls a chemical trigger that reshapes the entire body in under a second. A signal races down to 2 small glands sitting on top of the kidneys, and they flood the bloodstream with adrenaline. The heart, which a moment ago was beating 60 or 70 times a minute, can leap toward 170, 180, sometimes higher. Blood pulls away from the skin and the gut and the surface of the body and pours into the large muscles of the arms and legs. The lungs open wider. The pupils dilate to let in more light. The body is, in the space of a single heartbeat, rebuilding itself for one purpose: to move and to survive the next few seconds. And the changes do not stop at the heart and lungs. As the arousal climbs, the body begins making trade-offs, sacrificing abilities it no longer needs for the abilities it needs right now. Fine motor control, the steady fingers that can thread a needle or work a small mechanism, begins to fail first. Hearing can narrow until the world goes strangely silent, a phenomenon soldiers call auditory exclusion, where the deafening noise of a firefight is simply edited out. Vision tunnels inward, the edges of the world dissolving into gray while everything funnels toward the single point of threat. The body is stripping itself down to the bare essentials of survival, shedding everything that is not immediately useful. None of this is chosen. None of it is felt as it happens. The soldier does not decide to stop hearing or to narrow their vision. The brain makes these cuts on its own, in silence, in the service of a single goal it has been pursuing for hundreds of millions of years: keep this body alive for the next few seconds. But here is where it gets stranger than most people realize. Because that same flood of chemistry, the thing that is keeping the soldier alive, is also quietly switching parts of the mind off. When the threat response reaches a certain intensity, blood flow shifts away from the prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, the part responsible for reasoning, for planning, for weighing options, for language. This is the part of you that feels like you. And in the first seconds of an ambush, it goes quiet. This is why soldiers so often say the same thing afterward. I wasn't thinking. There was no thought. It is not a figure of speech. The machinery of conscious thought has been partially powered down, and something older has taken the controls. So if the thinking mind is offline, what is actually fighting? The answer is training. And this is the part that separates the soldier from the ordinary person caught in the same situation. In a person with no preparation, when the prefrontal cortex goes quiet and the amygdala takes over, what remains is raw instinct: freeze, flinch, run, or simply lock up entirely. The body floods with so much arousal that fine motor control collapses. Hands shake. Complex thought becomes impossible. People have been found after ambushes still standing, weapon in hand, having done nothing at all, because the conscious mind they were waiting to give them orders never came back online in time. But a trained soldier has done something to their own brain in the months before. By rehearsing the same movements thousands of times, react to contact, find cover, return fire, they have moved those actions out of the slow, deliberate part of the brain and burned them into deeper, faster circuits. The basal ganglia, the cerebellum, the parts that run a skill without conscious supervision, the same way you don't think about how to walk. This is the entire secret of military training, and it is not really about strength or courage at all. It is about preloading the correct response so deeply that it can run while the thinking brain is switched off. Training builds a version of the soldier that can act in the exact 10 seconds when the soldier themselves is not home. There is a number that haunts the people who study this. In the heat of combat, as the heart rate climbs past a certain threshold, the capacity for complex thought collapses. Somewhere around 175 beats per minute, the rational mind is essentially gone judgment, problem solving, the ability to process more than the crudest information, all of it shuts down. The only thing that still works at that level of arousal is whatever has been rehearsed so many times that it no longer requires thought at all. This is why soldiers train the same handful of movements until they are sick of them, until the motions feel meaningless. They are not learning what to do. They are building a reflex that can survive the loss of their own mind. And that is why, in the chaos, you will see something that looks almost impossible, people performing precise, coordinated actions with no memory of choosing to. A soldier reloads a weapon, takes cover, moves to support someone on their left, and afterward remembers none of it. The hands did the work. The deep circuits ran the program. The conscious self, the part that would normally take credit, was simply not in the room. Now, somewhere in those 10 seconds, the soldier will notice something they will struggle to explain for the rest of their life. Time slows down. Almost everyone who has survived sudden, extreme danger describes it. The bullet seemed to move slowly. I had all the time in the world. A few seconds stretched out into what felt like a full minute. For a long time, scientists assumed this was a trick of memory, that the brain simply recorded the event in unusual detail and replayed it as if it had taken longer. But the truth appears to be deeper than that. Under extreme threat, the amygdala drives the brain to lay down memories with extraordinary density, far more detail per second than normal life ever requires. And the mind seems to measure the passage of time partly by how much it is taking in. Pack a few seconds with an overwhelming flood of information, and those seconds feel enormous from the inside. The soldier is not really seeing the world in slow motion. The soldier is experiencing what it feels like to be fully, violently awake, to have every perceptual system running at maximum all at once with nothing held back. It is the most present a human being can possibly be. And the strangeness of it is something the brain was never designed to put into words. Researchers have actually tried to test whether this slowing is real, whether people in terror can genuinely perceive faster than normal, or whether the whole effect is stitched together afterward by memory. They had volunteers fall, in controlled conditions, into a sense of genuine fear, and asked them to read information flashing past at a speed too fast to see under ordinary circumstances. The finding was revealing. The volunteers could not actually see faster. Their eyes and their perception ran at the normal rate. But their memory of the fall was dramatically stretched. They were certain it had lasted far longer than it did. The slowing of time is real, but it is a property of how the frightened brain records the world, not how it watches it in the moment. For the soldier, this means the 10 seconds of the ambush will be remembered as something far larger than 10 seconds. It will be one of the most detailed memories they ever form, every fragment etched in with a vividness that ordinary life never produces. And that, it turns out, is not entirely a gift. Which raises a darker question. If the brain is recording everything in such overwhelming detail, what happens to all of that afterward? Because the same system that keeps a soldier alive in those 10 seconds is the system that can haunt them for decades. When the amygdala stamps a memory during extreme fear, it does not file it away the way ordinary memories are filed. It burns it in raw, fragmented, stripped of the usual sense of time and place. The slow, organizing part of memory, which normally adds the quiet label "this happened," it is over now, can be overwhelmed in the moment and fail to do its job. And so the memory does not settle into the past. It stays live. Months or years later, a sound, a smell, a flash of motion can reach the amygdala by that same fast road and trigger the entire response again, the racing heart. The flood of adrenaline, the thinking brain going quiet for a threat that ended long ago and exists now only inside the mind. This is the cruel symmetry of it. The exact mechanism that saves a life in 10 seconds is the mechanism that can refuse to believe those 10 seconds ever ended. The body, having learned the lesson too well, keeps standing guard over a danger that has already passed. So when we ask what happens inside the mind of a soldier in the first 10 seconds of an ambush, the honest answer is something most of us never have to learn. A sound arrives before understanding does. An ancient structure deep in the brain seizes control and rebuilds the entire body for survival. The part of the mind that feels like the person, that reasons, that plans, that speaks goes quiet, and something older and faster takes over, running on whatever was trained into it in the months before. Time stretches. The world burns itself into memory in impossible detail. And the body does what it was prepared to do, often before the soldier knows a decision was ever made. There is something humbling in that. We like to believe that in the moment that matters most, we will be the ones in control, that the calm, rational self we identify with will rise to meet the crisis. But the brain has other plans. In the seconds when survival is decided, it does not hand the controls to the thinking mind. It hands them to something deeper, something we share with every animal that ever had to survive a predator, something that was protecting living things long before there was a human mind to take the credit. The soldier who survives does not survive because they thought clearly under fire. They survive because for 10 seconds they didn't have to. Thanks for watching. If this gave you a new way of seeing the hidden machinery inside all of us, consider subscribing. There is more where this came from. See you in the next one.